Hey guys, in this video I will be reviewing The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series. So, spoiler-free review, this book is a really good piece of modern fantasy. It's fun, it's slightly different, it's serious, it takes itself seriously, it's perhaps could be called grim-dark, but not in a sort of oppressive or pointless way, and it's really fun and really enjoyable, and I would strongly recommend. So yeah, let's just get into spoilers, because I kind of don't like doing reviews where I have to be worried about what I say. So yeah, let's get into spoilers. So I'd say that the strongest part of this book is character, right, or characters, which is to say that all the characters kind of pop out of a page, and they're really, interesting and fun, and particularly Locke and Jaw, the two main characters, they really pop off a page. You really, I wouldn't say relate to Locke, because, he is kind of he is a bit of a bad person, but the author does Scott Lynch does such a fantastic job of making you understand him, but you're always rooting for him, even though actually if you were to think it through, he's not the greatest guy, you know what I mean? And so he does a fantastic job of really kind of pulling you in and making you relate to the character. And then it's the same with his crew, where, the twins, and then Jean, and then Bug, the little kid. You really you root for them and you feel for them and you want what they do to succeed. And so because of that, whatever, the plot, wherever the plot takes you, you're kind of invested, because you just care about the characters, So I guess that does bring us to, and of course the other side of things as well is that, I will say that our main characters are very well done and well developed. And then our kind of supporting cast of characters, like the characters that, that are getting scammed by Locke, are also quite strong, as well as the kind of, and I guess this kind of comes in under the world building because, these characters are part of the world, but, the Cuppa of Camorr, the leader of Camorr, of the Camorr's underworld, Barsavi, you feel like he's basically a fantasy mob boss, Kingpin kind of vibe, but in a fantasy setting. And so he's a cool character, and all these characters are pretty cool, and they kind of pop off the page a little bit, which is cool. Although I will say, when I get into a criticism section, there is a couple of kind of character motivation issues which can undercut that a little bit. But for the most part, the characters are fantastic, and they are really a strong point of the story. And then, of course, the second thing that I think is really cool about this is the world building. I think the world building is fantastic. Camorr, which is the city that all this kind of takes place in, really kind of pops off a page. It just feels very real. You kind of feel like you have an understanding of this place. You kind of feel like it has its own identity, and I think Scott Lynch worked really hard at that to try and make it its own distinct place. And you kind of feel like the story. You kind of feel like the story is taking place in this location, and that location kind of adds to the story rather than he just had to pick somewhere for it to happen. If that makes sense. So I think that the world building is really fantastic, and it feels real. It's got this, and it kind of has that thing where it kind of feels like there's more if you wanted to really dig in. And then there's it's got this there's current, fantasy currency, the food, legal system. It's all kind of hinted at, financial system even. It's all hinted at. It's not explicitly told to you because that's not what the story is about necessarily, but it is, you have this feeling that there's more depth there. And, perhaps there isn't, perhaps Scott Lynch never even thought about it, but you feel that way, and it really helps with the story. But of course you have the whole Eldrin thing, which is this, I think it's actually a really unique, cool take, or cool idea. Perhaps it's been done before, but I haven't necessarily seen it, where they're kind of living in the ruins of not the ruins, actually, that's not true. They're living in the remnants of a previous civilization who's made these, indestructible structures, which humans can't even do anything to. And so the humans kind of just live in and around these previous structures left by these Eldrin, because, they can't they can't destroy them, they can't do anything to them, they can't even change them. And I just think that's really, really cool. And he talks about how, this stuff has unique properties, it absorbs the light, so it kind of gives the city this kind of weird twilight thing right before dark, where all the light has been absorbed by the stars. It's just really cool. It's an interesting idea, and I thought it was really fun. Slight spoiler for the rest of the series, I feel like this is going to get explored more, just judging by how some of our later books go. But yeah, so I think that's really, really, but the world building was really, really well done. The plot, I will say, is a little bit weaker. It's not bad. It's not terrible by any stretch of my imagination. And like I said, the characters are so strong, and I feel like it kind of works anyway. But, so we kind of have, I guess, an A plot and a B plot. So the A plot is that, this dude who was wronged by, Barsavi, the head of the gangs, is coming back in, and he wants to kill Barsavi, get revenge, and take over, essentially. Except turns out he doesn't really want to take over. He just wants to take over briefly, for reasons, question mark. But the point is that, so that's kind of the A plot, and then, the way that Locke and Jean and his crew kind of get brought into this is because this guy wants to use Locke as part of his strategy to kind of impersonate him, and then he just kind of wants to make use of Locke, right? But I will say that there's a slight weakness there, which is the sense that you kind of get the feeling that the character isn't really driving the plot. He's not really involved so much. He's just kind of getting used and swept up by the plot, if that makes sense. And so it does kind of have that slight feeling of, like, instead of a character making his own destiny, he's just kind of being shoved along, right? But I will say that kind of lends to its own strength, because Locke is very much like a, he's I guess one of his main character traits is he's smart and he's quick on his feet and he thinks well. And so it's kind of quite fun to see these challenges, right after one another being thrown at him and then him having to deal with them. So I think that, there's strengths and weaknesses to this like style of plotting. And I think that because of the way the characters are done, because of the way Locke is as a character, it kind of works to have stuff just thrown at him and you kind of just see his response. And then of course we do get to see like the characters driving the B plot is kind of a scam that they're pulling on these noblemen, or this nobleman and his wife, where they want, they're trying to trick them into giving them basically lots of money for these, fictional barrels of brandy, essentially, of really good brandy. And that plot is really fun, and it's not necessarily a plot, because it's hard to decide exactly what it is. It's almost like a they're just characters doing stuff, but it's just really fun and interesting, and it's fun to see, them at work, pulling a scam and doing that. It's kind of like it's almost like there's a mini heist movie in the middle of the story, which I thought is fantastic. I really, really like it, because I like heist movies, and I like seeing these characters at work, like pulling their scam and stuff. And I think and honestly, for me, that was actually my favorite part of the story. Like, I would almost like if you were just like, here's the book without the main plot, and it's just this kind of heist thing on the side, I would really enjoy that book just on its own. So there's that as kind of an A and B plot kind of going on. There is a few kind of weaknesses and I will say that this book is like an 8 or 9 out of 10, right? And so these weaknesses are more like kind of nitpicks, and they're just like little things, but I was so happy to ignore them because I was having such a fantastic time, being sucked into the world and really relating to these characters and enjoying what was going on. But there were a few like kind of things where I was just like, but like I said, I was happy to ignore them. But I'll present them to you anyway here, because I'm a nitpicking douchebag. But so one thing that I was kind of a bit weirded out by is this guy. He wants to kill Barsavi because Barsavi kind of organized like the secret piece, which then led to his parents being killed. It's very tangential. It's like it would be like me wanting to kill the US Secretary of Defense because the US Army killed my parents, right? And it's like, well, yes, I guess indirectly that would be you could be like, yep, he's assigned blame, I will kill him. But it just feels very like, it doesn't feel very personal, you know what I mean? It's like this guy ordered some other dude to order some other dude, which kind of vaguely led to my parents dying. It's kind of like, I felt like it would have been, and this guy, he spent his entire life trying to get this revenge, and it just kind of feels like a bit, I don't want to say lame, but it just kind of feels a bit like you really wanted revenge on this guy so badly, like this one guy, really, so there's that. And then also with that same guy, Kappa Raza, or the Grey King or whatever, he wants to like take over the gangs, but for no real reason. Like, he takes them over for like a week and then he leaves, or he wants to leave. He obviously ends up getting killed, but he was just going to leave. And it's like, well, why do you want to take him over so badly? What was the point? You wanted to kill this guy, sure, you killed his kids, fine, I'm all for a bit of revenge, but why do you want to take over the gang if you were just going to leave in a week anyway? So I thought that was a little bit random. Other than that, I'm not sure if I had any other. I guess occasionally characters act in a very kind of, sometimes not the main characters, but sometimes some of the side characters, they act in ways that you feel the hand of the author a little bit, as in you feel like, would a real human have reacted that way? I'm not too sure. I feel like the author is kind of pulling the strings to make things like seem this way. Like, particularly, I think the weakest character in this entire book, and the character that really suffered from this, was the Spider, the lady in charge of Camorr's like underground, I guess. Sorry, not Camorr's underground. Camorr's like secret. She's like basically the chief of the KGB of Camorr, essentially. And she felt super, super weak. A lot of her decisions just felt very like, the hand of the author was very strong. Like, you kind of felt like she was doing things because the author made her and because it works for a plot, but not because it actually made sense in terms of what like an actual person in her position would do. So she takes Locke seriously, like a lot of the time, like overly seriously. She doesn't like check with him. She lets him go, which is weird. Like I get he's a charismatic guy, but would you really just let him go? Probably not, you know? Like, in a city where you execute people for pickpocketing, you're really going to let this guy go? That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And she's she's supposed to be this really great character, you know, and there's this big reveal like the spider, which basically, you know, the chief of the KGB of Camorr. There's this big reveal that it's actually a woman, and you're like, well, it's not really that big of a reveal because we don't really know much about her, and as it turns out, she's actually very ineffective and kind of shit at her job, repeatedly failing at her job, like, over and over again. And at every stage, she just kind of gets bested. She gets bested by Locke. She gets bested by, you know, the Grey King. And she just feels weak and ineffectual. And it's very unfortunate because this character could have been very cool. And I feel it almost, I don't want to say ruined, but it did take away from the final act of the story that this character who was central to it and was supposed to be kind of, you know, a bit of a reveal actually turned out to be very lame. And to be honest, the reveal was not big at all. You know, it wasn't like, I was not shocked. She's kind of the only character that feels like it could fit that mold at all. So as soon as she gets introduced, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly who this is. So I felt that was very, kind of very weak and very, yeah. Oh, and also the real bad thing is she, like, afterwards, you know, the two noble woman and man, you know, the husband and wife who were getting scammed. She's like, yes, I want you to take over my spy network once I die. And it's like, what possible qualifications have they shown at all? All they did was get scammed and look stupid. And then you're like, yes, you will be in charge of my spy network. You know, it doesn't make any sense at all. And, you know, while we're rolling on this criticism train, the flashbacks, so there's flashbacks throughout the story to kind of give us a bit more context on, you know, what, you know, where Locke came from, like how this gang came to be and all that sort of stuff. And I will say that they're good and bad. Sometimes they can be quite good. It's quite fun to kind of see where he came from. But I would say that perhaps they're a bit poorly positioned. You know, they kind of, you know, the story's going, you know, you're having a lot of fun, and suddenly you just get tossed into a flashback, and you're like, can I just get this over with so I can get back to the story? I feel perhaps the story could have benefited a bit more from trying to drop more subtle exposition rather than these, like, very obvious flashbacks. With that said, I wouldn't mind a few flashbacks. I wouldn't even have minded a prologue at the start with all the flashbacks before I got invested in the main story, because else you kind of get this thing, like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen Lord of the Rings, but you know that, like, there's the fantastic Helm's Deep battle, and it keeps cutting to Treebed. And Treebed on his own is fine, but when you're in the middle of this amazing battle, you really don't want to cut to Treebed. You know what I mean? And it's kind of the same thing with this, where there's, you know, this cool main story going on, and then every now and again it just cuts back to these flashbacks, and you're kind of like, eh. But with that said, I also feel like I've been talking, like, for, like, a few minutes about, like, a lot of negative stuff about the story, but I don't want you to leave with that impression at all. This is an absolutely fantastic book. I had such a great time listening, because I listened to it, and by the way, the audiobook narrator is really cool as well, so that adds to it. But I just had such a fantastic time. I was really, like I said, the characters are so fantastic. I was so engaged and so pulled in. The world building felt so real. I felt like I was really drawn into the story to a point where when the book ended, I was like, what? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Because I was so, like, pulled in. So, despite, you know, I talked a bunch of shit for the last 2 minutes, but ignore all of that. This book is, like, absolutely fantastic. It does have its flaws. I think it's his first book, but it's really, really well done. It really pulls you in. The characters are so fantastic, and I could not recommend reading it enough. And you'll be happy to know that there are 2 sequels which are good. We'll get to that in the next couple of videos. But yeah, I would strongly... So if you like this book, there is more as well. So yeah, I would strongly recommend. Yeah, have a great day.